Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here today. This is Nicole with Topaz, and today I'm very excited to welcome back John Barclay. Hey John.
Hello, Nicole. It's good to be back.
Yes, good to have you.
Thank you.
John is here to present how he is crafting his images currently with the new Topaz plugins and some of our old ones as well. So always excited to see how he's working with them. So John is an award-winning freelance photographer and enthusiastic workshop leader, and he's based out of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He's also an inspirational speaker who has been presenting his program, Dream, Believe, Create, to audiences around the country. His work has been published in a number of magazines and books and advertisements and is treasured by a number of private collectors as well. So without any further ado, I will turn this over to John.
Thank you, Nicole. Just give
Absolutely.
us a second here, folks, while we get this switched over. I need to go here, and then I'll let Nicole confirm to me that I'm good to go.
I see Boston.
Well, duh, yeah, go Sox. I sure hope my buddy Scott Oberly, who I have a bet with, is watching right now, and he better be laughing. But if you can't tell, folks, I'm a huge Red Sox fan, and I'm having a good time. Born and raised in the Boston area, so it's been a fun season. So that's got to root for the home team. Sorry for anybody who's a St. Louis fan. I apologize. I'm overwhelmed with how good that team is, but I'm happy to be up 3-2. Okay. So thank you to Topaz and to Nicole specifically for having me back again. I'm flattered to be back. I'm surprised that as many people keep coming back for these things, but I'm grateful for that, and I'm glad some of the things that I'm speaking about seem to resonate. So we'll try to do that again today. So what will I cover today? Well, I think I'd like to cover quite a bit, actually. I'd really like to help, I think, the listeners today or the viewers today understand how great the entire collection is. And so rather than focus on one or two, I thought what we'd do today is talk about simplify, clarity, detail, black and white effects, denoise, and ReStyle. That's a lot to cover, so we better get busy. Um, Again, for new listeners, and I suspect there's a bunch of old listeners, I shouldn't put it that way. I should probably put it a little more elegantly. For those who have been here before, you've heard me say this, but I think it's worth repeating, and that is just a philosophy. So this idea of crafting images is, for me, a real thing, and it's a choice of words. Crafting, we should be mindful and thoughtful about how we're using tools to craft the images and how we get a look that we're striving for, and to make the images feel as though or how that we felt about when we were capturing them. And so when I'm thinking about, I'm going to get my mail turned off here so we don't have to listen to that. So when I'm thinking about the images today, are we necessarily going to make beautiful images out of each one of these? Maybe, maybe not. That's not the point. The point is we're hopefully sharing some tools that you can be inspired for, or by rather, so that you can apply them to your images. So let's get going here. Let's pull open this particular image, which I did up in New Hampshire, of these beautiful birches in amongst the foliage. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a background layer. I'm in Photoshop right now, and I just did a Command J, just Command J, to get another duplicate layer here, and you'll see why I'm going to do that here in a second. So the first plugin I'd like to talk about is Simplify. And I'll use Simplify for foliage. Sometimes for me, the foliage looks a little bit, what word is the best word to use? Maybe crunchy or too detailed. And Simplify is a tool that allows us to soften some of that up. And the classic one is this Buzz Sim, and I can click on that, and that's a real common look that we can get. So as with any plugin from Topaz, you're going to have the ability to go to the left side and click on a preset, and you can like that preset or not like that preset, and then you can go over to the right side and make some global adjustments, some local adjustments, and or some finishing touches that you can do. So you have, in other words, you can fine-tune it or refine the look that's part of this preset. And you can also save a look and put that into a My collection, if you will, like I have here. And there might be some things that I've created here. And there's one specifically called Foliage Painting that I worked on, which is basically I used a preset called watercolor from the list, and then I tweaked it a little bit to bring back a little bit more reality and create the soft watercolory painting effect. I'll make that kind of the regular size now so you can see it again. And so, before looks like this, looks like a standard foliage scene. So what are we going to do? That's not really what I want, in all honesty. I'm not a huge fan of that particular look. But from experimenting and playing, I know that if I make this a layer, I can now blend this with the underlying background layer. And if I do that, I'm going to create a whole nother look. So let's see what that looks like. And over here is where I'm going to do that. So here's my background layer here. The layer I created, and I could rename that to be Topaz Simplify. I'm not going to take the time to do that. We have a lot to cover. But this opacity slider here is what affects the conversation that's happening between this layer and this layer. So if I pull this all the way down to 0, that means only the background layer is showing through this stack of layers. But if I pull it all the way to the right and then go all the way to 100%, that means only the Topaz effect, if you will, and in this case Simplify is showing. But if I bring it down to something like 50%, look what we have. We go from kind of standard foliage scene to something that has a more painterly feel, but it's not quite so obvious and in your face. That's what I'm after. That's much more appealing to me. And then if I wanted to, I could click on this layer, and I can go down the bottom. I'm in Photoshop here. Again, way down the bottom right, and I can click on what I call a front-facing washing machine. That icon simply gives me a layer mask. And then I can take my Wacom tablet if I want. I can hit the letter B to paint with the brush, make my brush bigger or smaller by tapping next to the letter P. I know we're covering a lot here. Don't be too worried about that. You can watch this again later. But if I paint with the color black, I can bring back all of the detail in these tree limbs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that. This is not a tutorial about that. It's just giving you the ideas. And I'll often do that. I'll go through the tree limbs. There's not a lot of predominant ones in this image, but in another image that I've done the same technique to, I did go through and very carefully paint back or paint away the Topaz Simplify look, and got rid of it all and all of the tree trunks so that they were nice and sharp, but I left behind that Simplify look on the rest of the image because I really like what it did. I'm going to quickly collapse this. Actually, no, let me go back and do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go back up here. Whoops. Helps to be in the right place. I'm going to go here, and actually, you know what I need to do? Let me create a duplicate layer again on top of that because I want to do one more thing from within Topaz. Let's go over to Detail 3, the new detail. And all I did without, I don't want to get too carried away with technique. Sorry to kind of be a little quick and haphazardly there. All I did was morph that layer into one that I can, that had everything I've done so far. It's a stamped layer, if you will. And now I can apply the next effect to that. Okay, so now we're into Topaz Detail 3. And here, even though I use Simplify to do just that, simplify the scene and not make it so in your face, to me it still looks a little bit flat and doesn't have quite the detail that I still would like to bring back. A little bit more of that, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this interface. I'm just going to show you that over on the right side, I'm not going to use any of these presets. But again, just by way of education here, same thing. This interface is identical on each of these plugins. You can go to that left side. But in this case, I'm going to use just ever so little bit. I really don't want to use a lot of the medium and the small detail to bring back a little bit of that detail. So before, hopefully you're able to see that. I know sometimes in a webinar it's hard to see. Trust me, it's pretty dramatic. I'm bringing back specifically, as I look over in this area, some nice detail back in that set of trees, while still leaving this more painterly look in the foliage on the left side. So I can click that and accept that, and now let's just go ahead and see what we got here. So we start with something that looks like a straight photograph. We've added Simplify to make it a more painterly, softer, and I think sometimes more pleasing look. And then I just added a little bit more detail back into it. by using the Topaz Detail plugin. So there's one idea for how we can use Simplify to give us some other look rather than just a straight photograph. But I guess again, my caution is, and my plea almost sometimes is, to be really mindful about what you're doing so that you're applying these techniques so that when somebody looks at it, they don't say, "Oh man, nice job with Topaz Simplify." You really want them to go, "Wow, that's really nice. I don't know if I recognize what you've done there. That's better." That's what we're after. Okay, so let's move over here to the next image, and this time let's talk about, I think I've got that pretty much still on the screen. Let me just check. Yeah, I'm going to bring it there so I can see what's going on here. Okay, what I want to do is talk a little bit about one of the newer plugins from Topaz, and that's Clarity. So let's jump into that. Clarity is fantastic. To me, this is a game changer. It really is. If we can make that a little bigger. It's really a game changer. I use this more than anything lately. Now, it's sticky settings, and you'll notice it's remembering what I've done the last time. So I'm going to go to the bottom right and just hit reset. Okay, so once again, what do we have? We've got landscape presets, and it's going to take a second to go through and create those presets. So we just have to wait while that does that. There we go. And so now we can click on these, and they'll load pretty quickly, and we can one click and get things looking pretty darn good just like that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I've done other webinars that go into much more detail about Clarity, and you can go look at that on your own time. So let's do really what I want to point out are some key features that I think you'll find very helpful, again, in this idea of crafting. So this is straight out of RAW, the way this looks. I've really not done anything. If you want to understand how to or how sliders interact or what they do, the best thing to do is start pulling them way to the right, way to the left. So the key feature of Topaz Clarity is it basically takes the clarity slider that you might find in Adobe Camera Raw or in Lightroom, and I like to say it puts it on steroids. So it gives you 4 levels of clarity to work with rather than that one sledgehammer. So if I pull it way to the right, you can see in the sky it doesn't look really that great. Way to the left in the micro slider, and it looks like that, starts to flatten things out. Double click on any of these on the left side. If you click on the titles of these, it'll zero it out. Whereas if I pull the high contrast way to the right, it's a very different look then. You notice it's not giving us that real detailed look, so it's working on bigger areas, larger targets, if you will. So you need to understand what's going on. Here's a little tip, by the way. If you're wondering how you might best use these, if you click on some of these presets and then pay attention to what it's doing to these sliders over here, that'll give you a good clue as to where you might want to start to play all on your own on the right side. And the right side is where I spend I rarely use presets, although quite candidly in this I do, because Clarity's got some really good ones built right in, especially into the landscape. So with this, what I wanted to do is definitely bring some clarity or pop, you can call it, to that foreground grasses, the green. So I'm just going to do the low and the micro contrast, and let's show you what that does before, after. Really does a nice job of bringing some detail, and it's also bringing some detail into the sky that I like. So 2 simple little moves, and we're adding clarity, or as I like to say, pop. Micro contrast might be another way to look at it. Oftentimes you'll find if you've got some really bright and dark areas, which this doesn't really, this was really soft light over in Iceland, you'll bring that high contrast slider over to the left just a little bit. Okay, what's a good idea too is that anytime you're doing work on contrast, which these sliders are definitely doing, you want to keep a look at your histogram and have that available. So I'm going to go up here and have that histogram available so I can see what's happening as I move these sliders. And look, if I move this, you'll notice that histogram is going to change. And at this point, it's probably moved a little too far to the right. Now, I'm overdoing it here on purpose. I would not normally add this much clarity, especially in the micro contrast. But I want to show you that if, in fact, this histogram, as it has moved over to the right a bit, all I do is go down to these tone level sliders. And this is what makes this piece of software so great. as you're affecting the histogram or the tonal contrast, and you possibly are blowing highlights out or blocking up your shadows, you have the ability now to correct that right here. So I just go to the black level, I'm sorry, to the white level, and bring that over to the left, and now I've corrected this histogram that was barely touching on the right side and rescued or recovered, if you will, the highlights that were blocking up. Pretty powerful. So just by way of kind of review, the way I use clarity a lot is I'll go with these top two sliders and move them to the right. Typically not this much. They'll be down maybe as high as 30. Rarely do I go that high even. And so anywhere from 7, 8, 9 up to 25, 30-ish, less usually on these, and then oftentimes I'm pulling the high contrast over to the left a little bit to bring back some of the brightness that's getting, and you'll see that on a future images too, that when I kind of review this piece of software again. Okay, so that's all well and good, and what a great job this does. So boom, before, after, pretty dramatic, and now it has some pop and image punch. But let's say, for instance, you did not want the sky to receive any of this adjustment whatsoever. Well, the masking tool that exists, and that's rolled, it was open already, but if it wasn't, and normally it looks like this, you can roll open the mask by hitting that caret. And now you'll have an interface that is quite candidly the best masking tool on the market. It's fantastic. So I can either hide or I can reveal the adjustment that's going on here. I can go backward and forward in my moves. I can use a brush, and that brush can be an edge-aware brush or it can be a normal brush. Normal meaning it's just laying down paint, if you will, whereas an edge-aware brush is going to find the edges, and this is the technology that Topaz has done a superb job with. Or I can use color range. So let's start with, let me check my notes here, make sure I'm doing this in order, because I kind of spend some time getting these things so they flow. Okay, that's what I thought. So we're going to go ahead and select the brush. I'm going to make sure it's an edge-aware brush. And I'm going to make this image fit the screen. Just give me a second. Okay, now the brush, you notice, has an inner circle and an outer circle. And so what I can do is I can change the hardness of the brush. The closer I bring that inner circle to the outer, the harder edge brush, the less feathering it has. I can also change the brush size here, and I can change the strength of this. In this case, I pretty much want it to be 100%. I want to show you that I want to remove. So now the key, I'm going to make the hardness a little less on that. The key is you don't want that inner circle to touch the house or touch the grass. The outer circle can. So now as I start to paint here, and I go carefully around the house, and I don't touch the grass, and I start to paint throughout here, you'll notice by the mask up in the top right corner that it's done a really good job of finding the edges of the house and of the land. Pretty spectacular, actually. Look at that. Look at the mask up here on the top right. So now, right from within clarity, I've been able to make an adjustment, and then make a creative decision that says, you know what, I don't really like that clarity affecting the sky like that. I would rather, did I use my mouse? Yep, I sure did. Good thing I have a tablet here, well, that's reconnecting. But so what I can do is I can now choose to remove that if I want to by using the mask. It's huge. It really is. So let's do this. I'm going to reset. Oh, good. I'm connected again, thankfully. I'm going to reset the mask. Now we're back to a white mask. So white reveals, black conceals, by the way, is the way the mask works. So if that mask is white, the entire effect that we did by these sliders up here is taking effect. I just want to make sure that you're aware of one other way you can do this. I can hit the color range tool. When I hit the color range tool, and this is one I use probably the most, I can put this green dot that comes on the screen anywhere I want on the screen. And now notice what it automatically does. It's masking. Remember, the white is revealing the adjustment. The black is concealing. So if I don't want this adjustment to take place on the house, I can put that green dot as I have on the house, and now I have control over the masking capability by making the sensitivity more sensitive or less sensitive, and I can change the size as well, and that'll affect how much is affected, so I'll bring that over. And now pretty much the house is being affected, or is being concealed, if you will, by the black, right? Being affected there. So really, really great masking tools from within a really great plugin called Clarity to give your image lots of pop. Very different than, by the way, a lot of people ask about why would I not use detail. Well, detail is more of a sharpening tool. This is really not sharpening. This is giving you what I would call local contrast and more of image pop and contrast to your image, which really makes it jump off the screen or off the printed page. By the way, it is additive. So let's say that mask didn't quite get what I wanted. Well, I can go back and grab my brush, and now this time grab a normal brush and come on over here and paint. Whoops. You know what I did? I painted with the wrong color. I want to reveal instead of hide. So I could come over here and paint with that brush and remove that part. And so, in other words, I want you to understand it's additive. So even though the house is really what I want it to be selected with that color range, I just want to point out that if the color range isn't quite getting everything you need the way you want, you can still go and flip back into the regular brush and tidy it up and finish it up. Okay, one last thing before we move on. Let's roll this up, and we do have as another tool from within Clarity, and that's huge. And normally I've done my color work in Photoshop. This is the first time I've used any plugin, for that matter, to really do any color work. And specifically, I find myself using the luminosity and saturation, rarely the hue. But the luminosity, I can go in and look at that grass, which is primarily yellow, and I can darken that grass or lighten that grass. And look at that, it's affecting primarily just that grass. Or if I flip over to saturation, I can do the same thing. I can pump up, make it look gaudy if I want. But I think you get the idea. You have really fine precision control of again, click on the word yellow and it goes back. So let's do just a little bit of adjustment. Let's darken that a little bit, go into saturation, and make a little bit more in that grass. And in the sky, there's got to be some blue in that sky, right? So we can bring some blue and make it look a little bluer. Flip over to that luminosity again, and maybe darken that sky just a touch and make it look a little more brooding like I remember it. So what do we have? We got before, after. Let's make that just a little bigger here. See what's going on. So before, after. So great masking capabilities in a program that gives you precision control over the clarity look that's really powerful. And you can adjust the saturation and the luminosity of specific colors in your image. And by the way, look, you have a mask capability for your hue, saturation, and luminosity areas as well. So lots of power going on there. We'll hit OK. And there we go. Let's go on to the next one here. Oops. Come back here. Okay. Now this is also for my my Red Sox spoof there. This is for my buddy Scott Oberly, who says, how come we haven't seen Abigail yet? Well, there's Abigail. This is my granddaughter that lives with us for the moment with her parents, and we're thrilled that she's here. She brightens our day. But in order to capture this image, I had to be at a high ISO. So if I go in tight on this, you can see that there's a fair amount, whoops, you can see there's a fair amount of noise. And so a tool that I've not spent any time with in any of my webinars, I realize, is the fabulous, and I mean award-winning fabulous, denoise. So let's go here, and let's just show you how I tend to use it. And this is the one I'm probably the weakest on, because I tend to use presets here more than anything, because this one's a little bit more complicated on the right side. So in this case, this is pretty much a JPEG, but you have the ability to do some raw adjustments, which are going to be a little more aggressive, or you can use the presets over here, and that tends to be what I do. So the light doesn't do quite enough. The moderate, look at that. Look how nice of a job that's done. Let's go to strongest. At strongest, the problem with that is it's going to be probably a little too much, and it's going to make her eyes lose some of that detail. Let's see if we can make that a little smaller and let it re-render here. So if we go original, you can see it's done a great job, but it's almost softened it too much. So I'm gonna oh, I went to strongest. I'm sorry. It's on a moderate. Moderate to me, in this case, for this image, I don't mind a little bit of noise showing through because it almost has a grain-like effect. And to be very candid, you're not going to see it unless you blow it up really, really big. But the point just being that with one click, usually I can come into denoise, pick a preset here, and get exactly what I'm looking for. And in this case, it's pretty significant. It goes from, look at all this noise here. So that noise goes away, leaving things pretty sharp in the rest of the image. So let's go ahead and hit OK, and accept that. And then let's introduce another choice here for your processing. It'll take a little while. There's a lot of math going on when you're talking about eliminating noise from an image. Look at that, really nice. Before, after with regard to noise. Okay, let's make Abigail a little smaller. And now let's come up here and go into black and white effects, which is just a great, I hate to sound redundant here, everything's great, right? But it really is. It's good software. Yikes. She looks like she's been possessed there. That's terrible. Okay, so there it is right out of the box. It comes in and you have these presets on the left side. And it, oops, that's right, we've got to go in. Sorry, I'm not that patient sometimes. And we can go and, quite candidly, this is absolutely one program where I have a blast just scrolling through and clicking. So if you click on one on the left side, and then you can use your arrow keys, and it'll keep toggling through, or you can hover over them and see them, or you can click here, this little icon, and you can see all of them together and start to pick one that way. So there's different ways to enter in. Let's go down to the Platinum collection in this case. And let's go down to Platinum. Well, I kind of like this look. And then, again, I can't stress enough, it's fun to be able to go to that left side and find a look that you like, but it's also fun to go play. And so black and white effects gives you an abundant amount of control, just like you would have in the wet darkroom almost. So the first thing I always do is I go take a look at what the filters are doing. These are just like filters you would use out in the field when you would be shooting that, back in the dinosaur days of shooting film. And by clicking on these, you can see how that's going to affect the look. And then, look, we have basic adjustments of contrast, brightness. You can boost the blacks, the whites. You can have effect on all of that information. But look, here's the real key. I didn't say we were going to cover Topaz Adjust, but we really are covering Topaz Adjust because basically inside of black and white effects, we have that Topaz Adjust module. And the way Adjust works is the adaptive exposure and the region sliders work together in harmony. This one is like an auto adjust, and the more I move it, so instead of an auto adjust button that does it one time and has, oh, here's the adjustment, that's it. This gives you an auto adjust from, consider it 1 to 100. But the region says that adjustment is going to apply to the whole image. If I pull it way to here, if I pull it way to the right, it's going to apply to the whole image. If I pull it somewhere in the middle, it's going to cover 50% of the tonalities. If I move it way to the left, it's going to cover mostly the tonalities that are on the outside, so the bright whites and the dark darks. So think about the possibilities that you have by moving those two sliders together and all the unique looks that I can create by affecting the whole image or part of the image. And I like boosting up in this image a lot. What's happening here? Let's turn this off. So here it is without using the adaptive exposure or the Topaz Adjust capability, and here it is with. Just bringing a little bit more life ever so subtly to the picture. And then let's go down here for fun. We can add a border if we want to. And we have different choices of borders here. You can in a drop-down list. So you can do grungy with a border. That's kind of fun for this image, right? You have all different choices there. Film grain. This quad tone is what Topaz is already setting for you, but you can go ahead and open that up and play with these sliders should you want to. You can add a vignette. And then, by the way, just real quickly, you can go to Creative Effects and you can use that Simplify feature in here if you want to. You can use Diffusion, which I've used a lot in other webinars. Again, there's a lot to cover here, so I want to keep moving along and cover the key things. And this one, the last thing I just want to show you, as much as I love this look, and I really love the way she looks here, one last thing that I do quite frequently, and you want to always roll this open and check it, is, again, go into your finishing touches here, click on transparency. So what does that do? Well, transparency is going to bring back some of the color of the original image. But it's interesting, it never brings back all of it. So let's see, look at how wonderful that is. I'm going to pull it all the way. You'll notice that even if I pull it way to the right, it's doing a marvelous job of blending back some of that. That hardly looks like the original image that we had. It's close, but it's a little more subdued and subtle. But if we bring that down in the middle or so, we've just added a little bit of that pinkish tone back, which I think is tremendous on this particular picture. So, review, like I like to do. All sorts of great collections, by the way. Nicole did a phenomenal job. She did most of this work from real prints that had these looks. So they're fantastic. And then you have all the presets here, but please make sure to go over here. Please make sure to go to the right side, play with these filters, and as we'll see in a future image, I'm going to review this one again too. You have even more control over the black and white tonalities in a way I'll show you on a last image that we're going to get to. Let me look at the time. My gosh, it goes by way too fast. Okay, so let's get rid of that. I hate to say goodbye to Abby, but we must move on. Okay, so a couple quick ones here just to drill home some ideas. Here's some great moving water up in the Swift River in New Hampshire, which is just horribly addictive. It's a blast. But what's missing for me on this image is some detail. I would like to have much more pronounced lines through this image, which is what I was shooting for with my shutter speed, but didn't quite get it. So what are we going to do? Well, easy. Let's go into Topaz Clarity and see how we can make this thing pop. Remember, it's sticky settings, so it's preparing all these previews again, and it's going to pop in what we used the last time. So just be patient here for a second, and I'll hit the reset button. Okay, we need that weight button. Ooh, that looks horrific, doesn't it? Okay, let's make that a little bigger so you can see what's going on here. Okay, so let's roll open Clarity. Remember what I said. We're going to use these top two sliders mostly. And I'm going to bring that over to 30 or so. I'm going to bring the next slider, the low contrast, over to 20 or so. And let's see what happens. Here's the original. Here's the processed. Pretty spectacular. Pretty great. I mean, now look at all that detail that's coming out in that water. It's pretty great. So, a couple of quick moves, and that's how fast. Now, in all honesty, it has affected this white a little more than I would want. Well, what do? We go open up that histogram. Look, it's touching just ever so slightly on the right side. What can I do? I go down to these. Remember, anything we do here is affecting the contrast and possibly moving our histogram and blowing things out. So we can come down and just move this white over just ever so little. And now we've recovered the white that got a little bit close to the edge there, and now we're making this white in the water here much more natural than it was. It was looking just on the hairy edge of being blown out, which you really don't want. Okay, move it over here a little bit to this side. Okay, so just by way of review, this water is probably taking on a little bit too much of the detail. I love what it's doing in through here. That's exactly, it almost looks like it's chrome. It's so shiny on here what it's done. And I love all the detail in through here. But up here, not so much. Well, easy. Make sure I'm in the hide mode. I'm going to go grab a brush, and in this case, I'm just going to make it a normal brush. And I'm going to go up in here and I'm going to paint out that effect just in that specific area. So now we have before, after. And again, in lieu of time, I'm going to kind of slow down here and I'm going to move on to another one. but recognize you can go to the hue saturation and work on that, which I would normally do on this image, and bring out more of the vibrance of the color. But I want to move on to other things here. Okay, so real quickly, let's move on to this image. And all I did was hit Command-I. So there's the original black and white image. By hitting Command-I, I was able to basically make a negative of the positive, right? I'm going to make this image just a little bit smaller so it'll fit the screen better. There we go. So the reason I did that is I know what's probably going to happen in ReStyle, and this is a fantastic application of this new ReStyle. So now, again, as this is loading, I did a whole webinar, just the last one I believe was on just this piece of software. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, you'll want to go back to that. But for now, let's reset this. And what you know, and this is going to be pretty quick, but again, if you want the more detail, you can watch this again, or you can go back to the full webinar on just this piece of software. So we have presets, and I can hit landscape, for instance, or I can hit nature. Whoop, come on, there they are. Hit nature. I can hit landscape, and I'm going to have presets here that give me the predominant colors that are being used for that preset, and I can hover over them this way. But a much better way to do this is to go to this icon right here. And when I hit this icon, it gives me a whole list. Now, everybody's complaint is they feel overwhelmed. Understandable. So here's a little tip of how you work with this. Notice that there's a camera on each one of these. If I click that camera like on this one, you notice it makes it blue. So you start clicking on ones that you like. I kind of like Cascade Gray. I kind of like the Seashell Pink Mist, actually. And I can use my page down key, and this ash gray is kind of interesting. Okay, so you get the idea. You can go click the camera on the ones that have interest to you. Now come up to the top, click on this folder right here. And what it's going to do is show you only the images that appeal to you. We can drill down even further now. Watch this. If I go click on this tag, top right, I click this tag and I say, you know what, I want to find other ones that look just like this one, the pumpkin sheen. I love pumpkin. The name is appropriate for Halloween coming up. I click on that and look what it does. Now we've refined the searching capability to find just what we want. So kind of like desert sand, click on the blue. Kind of like goldenrod weaving, click on the blue. Now look, we go back up to the top, click on the folder again, look. Now we have those two added, desert sand, and what was the other one? I forget. Oh, goldenrod weaving. There it is. We can go one step further. If I click on any of the tonalities in these here, it'll go out and find similar tonalities that way. So let's do that. I'm going to click on that one. Now it's going out and finding those tonalities. So it shouldn't be as overwhelming as you think it is. By simply making a couple of choices and understanding the interface, specifically this idea of clicking on the camera and then now clicking on the folder, you'll see everything in this session saved. Now it's going to, once you exit out of this, it's not going to save these. You've got to do this each time you come back in, but you can create favorites and all that stuff too, so don't worry. But look how much fun this is. So let's go ahead and hit Pumpkin Sheen. Now we select it. Now, guess what? We can adjust it from there. So I can go to the luminosity of these, and I can adjust the luminosity of the primary tonalities that are being used to create this stylized look. And I can further adjust it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You can adjust the saturation, the hue. They're not going to work like they do in any other program. They're going to be odd and wonky is a good technical term. But you're just going to have to play. I can't give you some good ideas there. What I can tell you, though, is this black level works just the way you would think it does. It's going to make a nice, strong black point, and I would use that here. The white point, it might make it, give it a little more life that way. And then please don't overlook this slider. The strength of this texture is really great. And then this one, I don't like giving it more. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull it way to the left. And now it's getting to be exactly what I had in mind when I photographed this. And very seriously, when I photographed this, I said to the guy standing next to me, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be doing texture work with this. And I did that. But then I said, whoa, wait a minute. I can use ReStyle, and it's even cooler. A lot more control. I mean, texture's great, too, and they both work. They're just both right answers. But this one I thought was spectacular in what it created. So that's a quick overview of using ReStyle. And do I always do that Command-I to invert a photograph? No, nor should you. But it is a good way to start with a nice canvas to then start putting some of these cool textures on. So there's that, and that does leave me perfect. Okay, I'm watching my time here, because I really wanted to get the one more. You heard, you may have received, maybe you haven't yet, but Nicole will be telling you, oh, by the way, go Red Sox. Anyways, okay. Shoot, whoops, let's kind of resize that again so it fits. Okay, so the special coming up in the month of November is going to be black and white effects at 50% off. But as you're going to find here in a minute, because you tuned in early, you're going to be able to get it at 50% off starting today with a special coupon code. So hang around if you're interested. So let's see how great black and white effects is. Of course, we get a notification that somebody's putting files in my Dropbox. That's very nice of them. Okay, so let's hit reset. That's remembering what we did on Abigail. That's exactly what it was remembering there. And of course, you have, whoops, let me just get my notes up here. And this one, I just want to work from scratch. I'm not going to pick a preset like we did the last time. I just want to show you the power. So you can go over these. I can hit the red. I can hit the orange, yellow, green, blue, and then neutral. In this case, I liked what the orange did. Pretty dramatic right away. However, we have the ability to tweak that filter, and this is huge, folks. Look, right here, this color filter that is open is where these are coming from. So look what the ability I have. So this is on orange here, on the continuum of sliders of colors of all the hues. It's also has a strength, so I can make this darker or lighter or stronger or less strong, right? Or I can gradually pull this over, and now instead of just having what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 filters, I have virtually all the filters I need, all the way over to red over here, or back over to orangey yellow. So hopefully there's a whole lot of wows going on, because that's how I feel about this. I can really tweak exactly how I feel that should look, and to me that's starting to look really dramatic, and these crepuscular rays are really starting to, you know, be bold and come screaming out of that sky. But remember what we have here. We have adaptive exposure, so I can work on those clouds. I'm going to bring the region. Remember the regions affects how much of the tonalities in the image is going to be affected. So that's going to affect a lot of them if I pull it to the right. Much better on this image. So we've added, let's see what that did. Here's before, after. Look at that Topaz Adjust again. This is using essentially Topaz Adjust. It's baked right into this plugin. But look how wonderful that is with giving you detail in those clouds and just making this thing pop over the edge. I think it's fantastic. So time's always up, and it always goes way too fast, so I'm going to take a breath and breathe here and then start fielding a few questions. Hopefully you've got some ideas out of this with regard to all of these great plugins. Yes, the deal is going to be 50% off of black and white effects, and that's a crazy good deal. It's a no-brainer. But I can't stress strongly enough that the entire complete collection makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're going to use denoise, you're going to use black and white effects, you're going to use clarity, you're going to use adjust, you're going to use black and white effects. Why buy them separately? You'll spend more money. Just get the whole deal. And I know, or I have a funny feeling, at least Nicole will have a good deal on the entire collection as well for your patience and sitting through and listening to me today. So Nicole, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much. This has been great.
I'm out of breath as usual.
No, this has been great. You've definitely shown a lot of the products off, so thank you. And I think a lot of people are enjoying looking at all the different things that you can do, so perfect. If you have any questions for John,
I'm sorry.
and his socks fanaticism, if you have any questions, you can type them into your questions module now. I'll try to get to them in the next 10, 12 minutes here, and then I'll announce the winner of the complete Topaz collection, which will include all of the programs that John went over here today and all of the rest of ours as well. There are 14 altogether. All right, so let's take a look at some of these questions that have come through. I'll start here up at the top. Fran had asked, what plugin is your favorite for the majority of your workflow?
Gosh, you know, they ask that every time, don't they? They want to nail me here. Gosh, you know, it's such an unfair question because it all depends on what you're doing. As you just saw on that black and white image, in this case, it would, you know, it would be black and white effects. When I see a photograph like that that screams to be black and white, you know, that becomes my favorite at that moment. So maybe an easier way to answer that, and I'll rephrase the question, you know, which are maybe the top 3 plugins you find yourself using? That seems a little more fair. So I definitely use black and white effects. I always use clarity. And to me, you know, the old standby is Adjust. Adjust is what Topaz has built their reputation on. So today, that's my answer. Adjust, black and white effects, and clarity. But on another day, it's going to be different. I never ever thought I would like ReStyle. I had zero interest until Nicole, you know, forced me to take some time and was saying, no, you really have to try. You have to try. And I said, okay, you show me, because I don't get it. I was like everybody else. I didn't get it. And then I went, oh, you got to be kidding me. This is great. You know, so when I have an image like the tree image and invert it like that, it's a no-brainer. That becomes my favorite program of the day.
All right, well, thank you. Oh, what camera is your, Bridget had asked what type of camera do you use, or, you know, maybe your #1 camera or something.
Sure, well, I've been a Nikon user here for the last couple of years. I use a D3X and all the associated, what you call pro glass, I guess, you know, 7200 and a 20, I have an older 2870 2.8 piece of glass, and then one of my favorite lenses is my 1635. But I must confess, my new addiction, and I'm absolutely in love with, is the Fuji X systems. I have an X Pro 1 and I have an XE1, and I just pre-ordered the XE2. I have lots of their prime lenses, 3 of them, and I have their zoom lenses. I'm a huge fan. Mainly, the image quality is stunning out of the Fuji series cameras. It's an APS-C size system, and the glass is tremendous. They have a different sensor than the typical sensors that are out there. It's an X-Trans, their own new technology, which produces full-frame quality detailed files that I'm just blown away with. Matter of fact, the picture you're looking at on the screen is a Fuji file. Colors are fantastic, and most importantly, instead of a 40 to 50 pound backpack on my back, I now carry around a 7 or 8 pound shoulder bag. And as you get older, that becomes really, really nice. I like that.
All right, thanks. All right, and last question. Thomas says, I've been using Lightroom for about 3 years, Lightroom 3, 4, and 5. I also have Photoshop 6 and CC. I'm confused with all the options, as I think that I can do most of these things in Lightroom 5. If possible, can you talk about why Topaz?
Sure, that's a great question, and it's a very fair question. So the honest answer is you're correct. You can do lots of these things in Photoshop. Lightroom, you can do some of them. Lightroom is a little more limited without the plugins. So why Topaz, or why anybody that makes a plugin for that matter? It's a really simple answer. Because the learning curve to learn how to do most of these things that are more affected looks is steep in Photoshop. It really is. And if you're an expert in Photoshop and you love it and you're addicted to it, by all means have at it. It's a great tool, and I use it for many things that I don't need a plugin for. But boy, for creating really dramatic rock and black and white photographs with that interface within black, do not want to take advantage of that. So to me, why Topaz? Because it simplifies the process and makes it easy and really fun to process. Again, you're going to have those outliers who are Photoshopaholics. That's a small group in my mind, and I'm on the hairy edge of being one of those. But even so, I would much rather go into a plugin that makes my life easy, simple, quick, fast, batch processing, whatever you want to do. So that's my short answer on that. I could go on for days, but that's my short answer. Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming back and showing us how you are using some of the programs currently. So always appreciate your presentations, and everyone has some fantastic feedback for you. So,
Well, good.
So thanks again, John. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you everybody for joining us here today. I hope you have a great morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Go Red Sox.
Bye.
Bye.